Now that we have a better idea of what flipped learning is and what it isn't, along with the pros and the cons of this style of instruction, I want to take some time to discuss some of the tips I've recognized that help the process of integrating flipped learning. So, by the time we are done watching this video, you should have a more clear idea of how you can modify a current lesson, hopefully a lesson that you brought with you today, into a flipped learning experience. Now, I know you're very excited about getting going with all of these wonderful tips I'm going to give you. However, I'm going to leave you in suspense for just a moment longer. What I'd like you to do is to generate a list of questions that you might have or that you do have right now about how to actually create a flipped learning experience. It could be about creating the video itself, what do you do in class, logistics, anything that you're thinking of. Give me a nice good list of all the questions that you have. So pause the video, write them down, and when you're done, we're going to go to tip number 1. Tip number 1, kind of like anything else, start the process slowly. Obviously, you're interested in the whole process. However, after a few flip lessons, you might say to yourself, this might not just be my cup of tea, and that's perfectly okay. So I don't want you to go gangbusters and spend a ton of time planning, preparing, creating flip lessons for your entire curriculum, and then not using them. The truth is there are some concepts and lessons that really should not be flipped. You know your content the best, and you also know your students the best. So if there's a concept that you know students struggle with and you want to take the time in class to lecture, do it. Don't flip it. My suggestion is to just start slowly and flip one lesson per unit. After you're done, evaluate how it went for you, evaluate how it went for your students. I really highly suggest get student feedback. They're brutally honest. And then adjust your style and things as you go. Make it fit you, make it fit your students. And then as time goes on, add more flip lessons the following year or later on in the year. The more comfortable you get, the easier it will get. Let's go to tip 2. Personally, I think the whole point of the flip is to allow students to engage with the content on a deeper level and at higher levels of thinking. That being said, the majority of what's done in class should be then on the shoulders of the students. You should not be doing all of the work. Now is the time to implement those really awesome, maybe inquiry-based activities you learned about a few years back, or now you have time for your students to really debate two opposing viewpoints. Whatever the case might be, you know what I'm talking about. Those activities that you have in your back pocket that are going to challenge students to create their own understanding that right now you just don't have the time for because you have to give them the information. You have to lecture. They have to take notes. The flipped experience changes all of that. So now that you do have time for those deeper, higher level activities, okay, now you have the time. Tip 3. You wouldn't want your students to sit back and do nothing while you're lecturing during class. And the same holds true in the flipped experience. You still have to hold students accountable for the content that they are now acquiring, but now they're doing it on their own. Examples of this accountability could be guided notes that you provide for your students. As an added assignment, students could blog about the videos and discuss what they learned and what they still might confuse about, create a student-generated discussion about the content. As you've noticed during these videos, I try to chunk the content and then stop. Let the students process, make you process or think about the information, and then keep going. Adding questions or quick activities to the video. In the video itself, always a good idea. You could throw in practice problems if you wanted to. I also like to give students quick formative assessments, and you can do this at different points as well. I like to use NICU. It's a good formative assessment tool. Other teachers that I know, and I've used this a little bit as well, use Kahoot. Different software, all easy to use. These different formative assessments can easily be made, and the really nice thing about these assessments is that I can gather data about which students understand the content and those that don't before the students even walk in the door. That's the cool thing. I know who gets it, who doesn't, and then from there I can start to plan my lesson for the day. I can differentiate my instruction based on the data, based on who knows it and who doesn't. I can group students into different groups of different understanding based on the data. It's all really good information. Let's go to tip number 4. And this tip deals with the videos themselves. Okay, a few general guidelines when making an effective video lecture. The first, keep it short. You're dealing with student attention spans which are not very long. I try to keep mine 10 minutes or less, which means for more complicated ideas, I'm going to make more than one video, and I'm going to assign 2 or 3 shorter videos for homework. Also in those videos, be transparent with students and let them know the learning outcomes right away at the beginning of the video. Give them the learning targets like I've given you. This way students can focus on 1 or 2 things instead of trying to decipher the most important ideas. Like I have done during these videos, give students something to do. Ask them to pause the video and summarize their thoughts, or create a list of questions to bring to class. And like I said, even give them a practice problem or 2. Finally, make sure the video is created by you with your own voice. I've noticed students make a stronger connection and understand the material a little bit better when it's made by you rather than somebody else's video. That doesn't mean that you can't use somebody else's video. I always like to have a couple extra videos on my Moodle page or for students to access that might be a little bit more detailed, more complex, and for the students that want it, they can get it. All right, possible tools. Lots of different tools that you can use for creating your video. Tons of them out there. Some of them are free, some of them you have to purchase. In the end, it all comes down to how much you really want to do with your video lectures. I mean, if you want to make them really fancy, edit them, annotate, all that kind of stuff, you're probably looking at something that you're going to have to purchase. If you're looking for something a little more simple, you can check out something like Jing or Screencast-O-Matic. That's what I'm using right now. I've used ScreenFlow in the past. You can maybe talk to Carol about that. Camtasia Studio is one that you have to buy. Good video editing software is out there ready for you to use. All right, last stopping point before the end. So now you have an idea of why you might want to flip a lesson, some tips on to actually complete the flip. What I want to know is, what questions do you still have about the entire process? Anything in the back of your mind, write it down, bring it to class, take some time, pause that video, and then when we come back, it's just summary time. So to recap, make sure that you start this process slowly. It's a lot of work and it's a lot to think about. Try 1 lesson per unit, get your feedback from your students, evaluate, adjust, and then keep going. By the end of the year, you will be a pro at this. So make sure to keep in mind that during class activities should focus on the students interacting with the content at higher levels of thinking, with you there now as a guide to help them. This adds more responsibility to the students, but it's a responsibility that they can handle. All right, that's all I've got. Thank you again so much for paying attention, watching these videos. We can definitely talk more during class.